Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Merlin Season 2, Episode 11, The Fires of Idursholus. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happens within this episode. So within the episode, it starts with Morgause casting a spell on the Knights of Medir to awaken them from their slumber following a legend of 300 years, or rather 300-year-old legend. We then see a farmer reporting to King Uther that the fires of Idursholus have been relit, which signals that the Knights of Medir are going to be riding again. And to ease their minds, he orders Arthur, which of course includes Merlin, to go to Idursholus essentially to confirm that everything is fine there and set people's minds at ease. We then see Morgana opening her window to find a little box, which when she opens has a little rolled up mini letter in it, and she then leaves the castle to go visit Morgause, who asks her, are you on my side or Uther's? And Morgana confirms that she's not on Uther's side, that she stayed her hand once when trying to assassinate him because she thought he cared for her. However, since then his actions have proven that that is not the case, and so she is on Morgause's side. So Morgause casts a spell to put her to sleep and then casts a spell onto Morgana, who then wakes up in her own bed. And basically from there, as she wanders through the castle, people start to feel very ill before eventually they fall asleep. We then, with Arthur, Merlin, and the knights that they bring, end up at Idursholus, where they do go inside to basically castle keep. It's either a castle or a keep or something like that. I'm not sure about the architecture, what exactly it is, but it looks like a castle. And they go inside and they do run into the Knights of Medir, who in fact have woken up. And unfortunately, all of the other knights that they brought with them do end up dying as Arthur and Merlin make their mistake outside and try to block the knights in to buy time. They, of course, rush all the way back to Camelot. However, upon re-entering Camelot, they find that everybody from the lower town all the way up to the castle itself have fallen asleep, including Gaius and Guinevere and Uther. The only one who happens to still be awake is Morgana, which of course Merlin immediately clocks that it has to do with the magic, but as he's keeping Morgana's secret, he instead makes up a lie to Arthur that, oh, it was some Gaius must have been treating her for something, gave her a potion ahead of time. That's what's happened here. So Merlin, while they try to figure out what to do with Uther, is sent to basically try to figure out what the potion is. When he's in Gaius's chambers, he tries to wake him up. He fails to. And then he and Arthur have to move Uther around. They first move him to his bedchambers. Of course, that's when Morgause leads the Knights of Medir into Camelot to begin their attack. And as they're running through the halls, it is noted that the Knights of Medir do not attack Morgana, which of course then triggers alarm bells in Merlin's mind. And basically through all these hijinks of trying to save the king, disguise the king, get the king to a cart outside so that they can take the king away, Merlin finds time to go and speak to Colgara, but Colgara is basically like, you told me you were going to free me. You haven't done so yet. And I still stand by that it's Colgara's own fault for not putting a timeline on that promise, because he never really specified when Merlin had to free him. But either way, he's tired of waiting and he's basically refusing to help Merlin. So Merlin, in desperation, swears on his mother's life, which matters more to him than his own, that he's going to free Kilgara, and Kilgara trusts him because it's his mother's life on the line, and so tells him that he needs to destroy the source of the sleeping curse to lift it, and that, of course, is Morgana. Merlin gets some hemlock poisoning, and he and Arthur and Morgana end up with Uther's sleeping form in the throne room where they have barred the door. Arthur then goes out to basically make a last stand against the knights as he's starting to fall ill and under the effects of the spell. Same with Merlin. Once Arthur has left, Merlin basically fills his water jug thing with the hemlock poison, ending up poisoning Morgana, who at first refuses the water but eventually does take it when he pretends to drink from it himself, and of course doesn't suspect him of poisoning her. Once she takes a drink, she starts to, of course, fall under the effects of poisoning. And Morgause, who is with the Knights of Medir, also starts to kind of feel that through the connection of the spell she's currently casting with Morgana's magic, as with Morgana as the source of it. And so she rushes into the throne room, breaks down the door, and basically tells like Merlin to save her. And he's like, "This is your fault. You made Morgana the source. You need to lift the spell, you need to stop the knights, and then I'll tell you the poison so that you can save her because I don't want her dead either." And Morgause ultimately chooses Morgana over her attack, and so she puts the knights back to sleep, and the spell has already started to wear off because of Morgana, and she ends that too, and then Merlin shows her the bottle, which says hemlock on the label, and she then casts a spell which basically magically transports her elsewhere. And our final scene of this episode is Merlin keeping his promise, going into the caves and using one of the Knights of Medir's swords alongside his magic to break the chains that hold the dragon, and he is unable, unfortunately, before he breaks the chains, to get any sort of promise from Kilgara that he won't harm Camelot. Setting us up nicely for the next episode. So now that we have been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's time to rank this episode on our ranking list. As a reminder, we rank on our mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the score, followed by the personal list, which uses the entertainment value and my personal opinion to rank the episode. So our mostly objective rank values that I felt applied to this episode start with our multi-season supporting character development, and technically this is a development for both of the characters, but ultimately I'm counting it as one because they are co-conspirators, and this of course is the fact that Morgana and Morgause are co-conspiring to defeat Uther, and that Morgana is a willing participant going along with Morgause's plan, which begins with awakening the Knights of Medir and ends, of course, with all of Camelot asleep and vulnerable so that she has a easy path to go and kill Uther. So that's 3 points. We then have our multi-season supporting character development, which is Merlin freeing Kilgara per his promise on his mother's life and his earlier promise that had no timeline, which is a very big development, so that's 4 points. We then have our world building element, which is worth 4 points, which of course is that 300-year-old legend, 300-year-old legend that when the fires of Idar are lit, the Knights of Medir are going to ride again and supposedly attack Camelot or be somewhat adversarial to Camelot, as they wouldn't have to worry about it otherwise. And of course, this is then what Merlin and Arthur go off to check, which is why they're still awake when Morgause attacks. And that brings our positive points for this episode up to 11. However, there were a couple of negatives. Obviously, there was the character regression of Merlin poisoning Morgana. and she knows it too. And the reason I'm considering it a character regression is I don't think had his hand been forced, even though he's been warned multiple times of Morgana going bad and Morgana being fundamental to Arthur's eventual doom and all of these other things, he has considered her a friend and he has always not done as Kilgara suggested in order to make sure that she's fine and happy. And this is the first time that he's gone against that friendship and actually attempted to kill someone for the greater good. And ultimately, luckily, he was able to talk Morgause into ending her attack so that Morgana could hopefully be saved. But at the same time, it is a fact that he poisoned a friend, which is outside of his usual character. And it was out of desperation, which is, the saving grace of it, but still not what I would expect from Merlin. And it's unfortunate he couldn't have found a different path to it, which I feel would be a little bit more in character. But also, if he stayed friends with Morgana, most of the future plots couldn't happen. So I understand why the decision was made here. The second negative, of course, is the negative messaging or behavior, which, of course, is Morgana betraying Uther and Merlin betraying Morgana, and the fact that the sleeping spell affects everyone, including the innocent. Luckily, because the knights are under Morgause's control, none of the innocents end up being killed by it, as far as the episode shows. But it's still a fact that the sleeping spell does affect people beyond the target, and anything could have happened to them while they were unconscious. An animal with rabies could have gone through the town, bit everybody who was asleep. You never know. You're leaving them vulnerable outside. The guy in the cart, had that cart just gone like right through and ended up going through some dangerous area, he wouldn't even have known because he was unconscious. So I feel like there's a lot of what ifs that could have happened that didn't happen. But if you're going to do a spell like that, you need to consider the consequences beyond just your target will be asleep and you'll have an easy path. And I don't think Morgause did that. And so I'm still counting it as a -2. And that brings this episode objectively to an 8 out of 10 episode. With the 8 out of 10, that brings our list of the season 2 rankings so far on our mostly objective list to in first, we have The Once and Future Queen. Second, Sweet Dreams. The Witch's Quickening, The Lady of the Lake. This episode comes in fifth, The Fires of Idursolis. Then we have The Curse of Cornelius Sagan in sixth. The Sins of the Father, The Nightmare Begins, Lancelot and Guinevere, Beauty and the Beast, and then currently in 11th place we have The Witchfinder. For my personal ranking, I thought this was a very well done episode. I didn't feel like there was any real critiques to have on it. I felt like it kept your attention the entire time. It did play on your emotions as you always wanted to know what was happening. It also left you on a cliffhanger that makes you really excited for the finale of the season. So it's amazing as a pre-finale because it's setting up that next episode. Morgana's been kidnapped by Morgause after being betrayed by Merlin, who she thought was her friend, keeping her secret that she is magical. The dragon is now loose to go ahead and do whatever he wants to do. And as he said himself, he's the last of his kind, so he has but one path ahead of him. It also, of course, had some comedic moments thrown in there. For example, when Merlin tries to break the spell on Gaius, he casts a spell and basically it makes Gaius sit up with this big goofy smile on his face, and Merlin gets super happy about this and is like, Gaius, and tries to talk to him before realizing that he's literally just a frozen statue with like a garishly large smile on his face, which was hilarious. And then of course he tries other spells, like a spell that drops water on him to try to wake him up. None of this works. But that was a great episode. When they're both about to fall asleep, Arthur, before he makes his final stand, basically is scolding Merlin, trying to get him to stay awake. They have their little back and forth, and then Arthur falls asleep, so Merlin slaps him, and Luckily, is forgiven for it because it got him back awake. But I thought that was hilarious as well. And then, Arthur goes out, uselessly fights these Knights of Medir because honestly, they are very similar to his initial fight back in the day in season 1 against his uncle who is dead. Anywho, against his uncle who is dead, and so I feel like it is a little bit repetitive, but because it's in separate seasons and several episodes in between, I'll forgive that, and I still enjoyed it. Also, I'm missing my pen. I have lost it, and it's distracting me. But anyways, overall, I liked this episode. I liked this. To summarize, I liked the comedic elements. I liked the atmospheric elements when they're, you know, investigating that 300-year-old legend and they're going to that creepy old castle, and then you've got these zombie knights in the armor. The sleeping spell, I think it was a strong concept, though I think there wasn't a lot of foresight into what could go wrong, and I found my pen. Yay. Anywho, and also how they were able to get it. I like that it does set up very well for future seasons and also the finale episode, and leaves you on a cliffhanger that actually works and makes you excited for the next episode, rather than most cliffhangers which just kind of make you frustrated, or at least make me frustrated. So in this case, I actually think it worked. Wonderful, amazing. I gave it a 9 out of 10. And so on my personal ranking for season 2 so far, first episode is still The Lady of the Lake, but this episode I did put into second, The Fires of Idrsholas. Third, The Nightmare Begins, Sweet Dreams, The Curse of Cornelius Sagan in fifth. Then we have The Beauty and the Beast, The Sins of the Father, The Witch's Quickening, The Witch Finder, Lancelot and Guinevere, and then in 11th we have The Once and Future Queen. Which brings us now to our final segment of the series ranking so far. And in first, well, on our, oh my gosh, I am so distracted right now. Let me start again. So, series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking, season 1 ended 69.23%. Season 2 so far, 75 out of 120. On the personal ranking side, we have season 1 ended with 66.92%. And season 2 so far has a ranking of 75%. So with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Merlin season 2 episode 11, The Fires of Idrsholas. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.